In the kingdom of Ohafia, nestled deep in the heart of Abia State, Nigeria, there was a great king named Onyeze I. He was no ordinary king. People said he had powers that no one could understand. The mere mention of his name sent shivers down the spine of anyone who had it. Onyeze I was not only rich, but was also gifted with mysterious spiritual powers that made him feared and respected by everyone in Ohafia. His voice was thunderous, his steps like the rustling of leaves on a dark windy night, and his eyes, well, no one dared to look directly into his eyes. Hello everyone, my name is Adugo and you're watching the African Tales channel by Adugo. Before we dive into today's video, please kindly click under the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you will be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, let's get into the story. In Ohafia, people whispered stories of how Onyeze I could command the rivers, how he could make the trees speak, and even how he could call forth spirits from the shadows. Nobody knew where he got his powers, and nobody dared to ask. In Ohafia, when Onyeze I spoke, you listened. When he gave orders, you obeyed, and when he appeared, you bowed down low and held your breath until he left. One evening, just as the sun was dipping low and casting an orange glow over the land, Onyeze I made an announcement that shocked the whole community. He gathered everyone at the village square, his tall figure draped in a shimmering white robe, and said in his deep booming voice, "I need a human head to complete an important ritual." A hush fell over the crowd. The villagers looked at one another, their hearts pounding in fear. Why did he need such a thing? What could this powerful king be planning? But, of course, nobody dared to ask. Even the bravest warriors of Ohafia felt a chill run down their spines. Questions swelled in their minds, but they remained silent, knowing the danger of speaking against the king's wishes. Among the people in the square was a young boy named Chima. Chima was only 9 years old, but had a heart braver than more adults in Ohafia. He looked up at his mother, Mama Nkechi, with wide questioning eyes. "Mama," he whispered, tugging at her wrapper, "why does the king need a human head?" Mama Nkechi quickly covered Chima's mouth, her eyes darting around to make sure nobody heard him. "Hush, Chima," she whispered back, her voice trembling. "You must never question the king's wishes. It's dangerous." But Chima's curiosity was stronger than his fear. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Why would a king as powerful as Onyeze I need something so strange? That night, as the villagers returned to their homes, Chima lay awake wondering what he could do. He felt an urge deep in his heart to find answers. As the night stretched on, a plan began to form in Chima's mind. He knew it would be dangerous and he knew his mother would never allow it. But he was determined. Chima decided he would find out why King needed a human head, and if he could, stop him. The next morning, Chima slipped out of his home before the sun had fully risen. He made his way through the quiet village, moving like a shadow so nobody would notice him. His heart pounded with every step, but he pushed forward, driven by the mystery he was determined to solve. He arrived at the king's palace, a grand structure surrounded by tall walls and guarded by fierce warriors. Chima hid behind a tree, peeking around the corner, watching as the guards patrolled. He waited patiently until he spotted an opening. With a quick glance around, he crept closer to the palace walls, his small figure almost invisible in the early morning shadows. Just as he reached the palace gates, a hand grabbed his shoulder. Chima's heart jumped as he gasped, looking up to see an old man with a kind wrinkled face. "What are you doing here, boy?" the man asked in a low voice, his eyes filled with concern. I want to know why the king needs a human head," Chima whispered, his voice trembling but determined. The old man looked at him with surprise, then sighed deeply. "You are a brave boy, but you are walking a dangerous path," he said. "Come with me, there are things you must understand." Chima followed the old man, feeling both scared and excited. They walked to a hidden spot behind the palace, where the old man sat down and beckoned Chima to sit beside him. "There are things in this world that are better left unknown," the man began, his voice soft yet filled with sadness. "But if you truly wish to know, then I will tell you a story. The king's powers. They come from a deal he made long ago, a deal with the spirits of the dark forests." Chima listened, his eyes wide with wonder and fear. As the old man spoke, a sense of dread crept into Chima's heart. He realized that uncovering the truth might be more terrifying than he had ever imagined. The old man's voice grew quieter, as if he was afraid the very trees might overhear his words. "Many years ago," he began, "Onyeze was just an ordinary man, just like you and me. But he hungered for power more than any man should. One night, he went deep into the dark forest, the path where even the bravest hunters do not go. It was said that whoever walked there at midnight could call upon the spirits, dangerous spirits, spirits that demanded a terrible prize." Chima leaned closer, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and fascination. He could barely breathe, caught in the story the old man was weaving. "The spirits promised Onyeze great power," the old man continued. "They told him he would rule all of Ohafia, that he would be feared and obeyed. But there was a price. Each year, he would have to offer something valuable. First, it was gold, then precious stones, then animals. But every time, the spirits demanded more and more." The old man paused, his face growing pale as he spoke the next words. "Now, they want a human head." Chima gasped. "So that's why he asked for it," he whispered. The old man nodded gravely. "Yes, but this isn't the first time. The king has done this before, quietly, so no one would know. But now his power is weakening, and the spirits are getting angry. They demand more sacrifices to keep him strong." Chima felt a shiver down his spine. He wanted to run back to his mother to forget everything he had heard. But another part of him, the braver part, burned with anger. How could a king, someone who was supposed to protect his people, sacrifice them for his own power? "What can we do?" Chima asked, his voice steady despite the fear in his heart. The old man looked at him, surprised by his courage. "There is only one way," he said softly. "The spirits live in the heart of the dark forests. If someone could go there and destroy their sacred totems, their connection to Onyeze would be broken. But the forest is no place for a child. It's full of dangers beyond imagining." Chima's heart pounded, but he stood a little taller. "I will go," he said. "I have to try. If nobody stops him, he will keep hurting people. It's not right." The old man shook his head. "You are a brave boy, Chima, but this journey would be perilous, even for a grown warrior." But Chima's mind was made up. He could see the sadness in the old man's eyes and knew he was right. Still, he couldn't ignore the call to act. His people were suffering, and he had to do something about it. "Will you help me?" Chima asked, his voice barely a whisper. The old man sighed deeply, then nodded. "I cannot go with you, but I can give you something that might protect you." From his cloak, the old man pulled out a small carved amulet, glowing faintly in the moonlight. "This was given to me by my own father," he said, placing it carefully around Chima's neck. "It will keep the spirits from sensing you, but it won't protect you from everything in that forest. Be wise, Chima, and stay close to the shadows." Chima took the amulet, feeling its warmth against his chest. He thanked the old man, his heart racing with a mix of fear and excitement. He knew he might never return from this journey, but he also knew he couldn't stand by and do nothing. As dawn began to break, Chima slipped away from the village and made his way towards the dark forest, his small figure swallowed by the towering trees. Every step felt heavier, but he held tightly to the amulet, reminding himself of why he was doing this. The forest was dark, even as the sun climbed higher into the sky. Strange noises surrounded him, whispers and rustling leaves that seemed to be calling his name. He clutched the amulet tighter, trying to ignore the shadows that danced in the corners of his vision. Hours passed as he ventured deeper into the forest, each step bringing him closer to the heart of darkness. Suddenly, a rustling in the bushes made him stop. He froze, his heart pounding. Out of the shadows emerged a strange creature, unlike anything he had ever seen. It was small and hunched, with sharp glowing eyes and long bony fingers that clawed at the ground. "Who are you?" Chima stammered, his voice barely a whisper. The creature tilted its head, its glowing eyes narrowing as it studied him. "I am a spirit of this forest," it replied in a voice that sounded like wind through dry leaves. "Why have you come here, child?" Chima swallowed hard, summoning all his courage. "I have come to break the king's hold on our village," he said. "He is hurting my people and I won't let him continue." The creature's eyes widened with surprise, then narrowed again. "Brave words for a child," it hissed, circling him slowly. "But do you know the price of defying the spirits?" Chima held up the amulet, hoping it would protect him as the old man had promised. "I know," he replied, his voice firm. "But I am not afraid. I have to save my people, no matter the cost." The creature laughed, a strange chilling sound that echoed through the trees. "Very well, little one," it said, its voice dripping with something that sounded almost like respect. "If you truly wish to break the king's bond, you must pass 3 trials. Only then can you reach the heart of the forest and destroy the totems." Chima took a deep breath, his determination shining in his eyes. "I am ready," he said, his voice steady. And with that, the creature vanished into the shadows, leaving Chima alone, standing at the edge of a path that led even deeper into the darkness. Chima's journey was far from over. The trials awaited him, each one more difficult and frightening than the last. But he pressed on, his heart filled with the hope of freeing his people, unaware of the dangers that lay ahead and the mysterious figures watching his every move. The forest grew darker as Chima took his first steps onto the path. Strange sounds echoed around him, and shadows shifted in the corners of his vision. He clutched the amulet tightly, feeling its warmth against his skin and reminding himself of the old man's words. The creature had spoken of 3 trials, but he had no idea what they would be or if he could survive them. As he walked, the first trial appeared before him, a river as black as night, its waters thick and unmoving. The river stretched wide, with no way around it. Chima felt a chill crawl up his spine. He had never seen a river like this before. The surface was so dark he couldn't tell how deep it went, and strange whispers seemed to drift from the water itself. Just as he was about to turn back, a low echoing voice emerged from the depths of the river. "Why have you come here, child?" it asked, the voice as smooth and cold as the water. Chima swallowed his fear. I have come to break the king's bond with the spirits. I want to free my people from this evil. The river rippled as though laughing at him. Do you think it will be so easy? Many have tried and failed. If you wish to cross, you must give me something in return. Chima glanced around, wondering what he could possibly offer. What do you want? He asked, his voice trembling. The river stilled, its voice growing softer. I want your deepest fear, it whispered. Tell me what frightens you most, and I will let you pass. Chima's heart pounded. His greatest fear? He thought back to the night he had lain awake, shivering at the thought of losing his mother, of seeing her taken by the king's men, sacrificed for some unknown power. The thought alone made his chest tighten with dread. After a long silence, Chima took a deep breath. I am afraid of losing my mother, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. The river stilled, as if satisfied with his answer. Slowly, a narrow path of stones rose from the water, creating a bridge for him to cross. Chima hesitated, but he knew he had no choice. Carefully, he stepped onto the stones, his heart pounding with every step. Finally, he reached the other side, breathing a sigh of relief as the path disappeared back into the dark water. The forest thickened as he ventured onward, and soon he found himself in a small clearing. In the center stood a large tree, its twisted branches reaching up to the sky like dark claws. Hanging from the branches were strange, glimmering orbs that cast an eerie glow over the area. Before Chima could take another step, the tree's twisted roots began to shift and move, forming into the shape of a face. The face looked down at him with cold, ancient eyes, and its voice was as deep as the earth itself. Welcome to the second trial, it rumbled. To pass, you must make a choice. You may take one of these orbs, each holding a different power, but choose carefully, for each comes with a prize. Chima looked up at the glowing orbs, each one pulsing with a strange, otherworldly light. One orb was red, another blue, and another green. Each seemed to call to him, offering promises of strength, courage, and wisdom. Choose the red orb, and you will gain the strength of 10 men, the tree said, but you will lose the kindness in your heart. 2. Choose the blue orb, and you will gain unmatched courage. It continued, but you will be unable to feel fear, even when you should. Choose the green orb, and you will gain the wisdom of ages. It finished. But you will lose the memories of your childhood, of everyone you hold dear. Chima's heart sank. Each orb offered something he desperately needed, but the price was steep. He thought of his mother, of her gentle smile and warm embrace. He couldn't imagine losing the memories of her, even if it meant becoming wiser. He knew he needed courage, but the thought of never feeling fear again felt unnatural. Fear was what kept people safe. Finally, he looked at the red orb. Strength was tempting, but without kindness, he would be no different from the cruel king he sought to stop. Taking a deep breath, Chima turned away from the orbs. I don't want any of them, he said quietly. I'll face the dangers with what I have. The tree's face shifted, a hint of surprise flickering in its ancient eyes. You are wiser than you know, it said softly. The ground rumbled as the tree's roots untangled, forming a new path for Chima to follow. Go forward, brave one. You have passed the second trial. Chima felt a surge of relief and pride as he stepped onto the path, which led him deeper into the forest. By now, night had fallen, and the darkness pressed in around him, filled with sounds that sent chills down his spine. But he kept moving, his heart beating steady and strong. As he approached a clearing, he felt a powerful presence watching him. Out of the shadows emerged a tall figure cloaked in darkness. The figure had no face, only empty eyes that seemed to pierce into Chima's soul. "Welcome to the final trial," it said, its voice a hollow whisper. "To pass, you must face yourself. Show me the reason you fight, and I will decide if you are worthy." Chima felt his heart hammering in his chest. He thought of his village, of the frightened faces of the people, and the cruelty of Onyeze. He thought of his mother and the sacrifices she had made for him. Summoning all his courage, he looked into the figure's empty eyes and spoke. "I fight because I want to protect my people," he said, his voice shaking but firm. "The king has caused them too much pain, and I can't stand by and do nothing. My heart tells me it's my duty to stop him, even if it costs me everything." The figure was silent for a moment, as if considering his words. Then slowly it extended a bony hand and placed it over Chima's heart. Chima felt a strange warmth fill his chest, a light that pushed back the darkness inside him. "You have passed," the figure said, its voice now filled with a strange kindness. "Your heart is pure and your courage true. Go forward, young warrior, and may your path be blessed." With that, the figure disappeared, leaving Chima standing alone in the clearing. The trees parted before him, revealing a narrow path leading to the very heart of the dark forest. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his journey but also a newfound strength within him. He knew he was close now. Chima followed the path, his heart steady and his mind focused. At last, he reached a small altar surrounded by ancient totems, each one carved with strange symbols. He knew this was it, the source of the king's power, the spirits that had bound themselves to Onyeze. With determination, he approached the altar holding the amulet tightly. He raised it high, the warmth radiating from it like a beacon. The totems began to shake and crack as if sensing the power he held. Just as he was about to destroy the first totem, a voice echoed through the clearing, a voice he recognized instantly. It was Onyeze. "Foolish boy," the king's voice boomed. "Did you think you could defy me? Did you think I wouldn't know?" Chima froze, feeling a chill sweep over him. But then he remembered the trials, the courage he had found within himself. Taking a deep breath, he stood his ground, refusing to back down. "I will not let you hurt my people anymore," he called out, his voice steady. Laughter echoed around him, dark and cold. "Then come, boy," Onyeze's voice taunted. "Let us see how strong your heart truly is." And in that moment, Chima knew he would have to face the king himself. In the very heart of darkness, the final battle had begun. Chima's heart thundered, but he steadied himself, gripping the amulet with one hand and clenching his fists. He could feel Onyeze's presence all around him, as if the king was the forest itself, watching his every move. Shadows flickered, swelling into shapes and seemed almost alive, and suddenly, from the darkness, Onyeze appeared. The king was cloaked in a dark robe that seemed to blend into the forest shadows, his tall, imposing figure looming over Chima. His eyes glowed with a strange, unearthly light, filled with anger and menace. Chima felt a pang of fear but took a deep breath, reminding himself why he was there. "So, the boy thinks he can break this king's power?" Onyeze sneered, his voice as cold as the night air. "I have ruled Ohafia for years. I have powers that you cannot even imagine." Chima took a step forward, his voice trembling but strong. "I know what you've done to my people," he said. "You've taken from them to keep yourself powerful, but I won't let you hurt them anymore." Onyeze's laugh was dark and hollow, echoing through the trees like a thunderclap. "You think you can stop me, boy?" he sneered. "I am bound to the spirits of this forest, powers older and stronger than you will ever know." Chima held up the amulet, letting its warm light shine into the darkness. "I have faced your spirits," he said boldly, "and I have passed their trials. I am not afraid of you, Onyeze. The king's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Chima thought he saw a flicker of fear cross the king's face. But it was gone as quickly as it had come, replaced by a scornful smile. "Very well, boy," Onyeze growled, his voice dripping with malice. "If you are so eager to be a hero, then let us see if you are strong enough to survive." With a wave of his hand, the ground beneath Chima's feet trembled, and dark vines burst forth, twisting and writhing the snakes. They coiled around Chima's legs, tightening with a force that made him gasp. He struggled, pulling against the vines with all his strength, but they held fast, creeping higher and higher. Just when he thought he would be crushed, Chima remembered the amulet. Clutching it tightly, he whispered a quiet plea, calling on the strength he had gained from the trials. The amulet glowed brighter, its warmth spreading through him, and he felt the vines begin to loose. With a fierce cry, he pulled free, the vines falling away as he stepped forward. Onyeze's face twisted in anger, but Chima didn't hesitate. He ran towards the altar, raising the amulet high. But before he could strike, Onyeze's voice echoed again, this time laced with desperation. "Stop!" the king cried, his tone shifting. "You don't understand. If you destroy the totems, you will unleash powers that no one can control. I have bound these spirits to protect Ohafia." Chima hesitated, his hand hovering above the totem. Could it be true? Could the spirits really be protecting this village? He looked back at Onyeze, whose eyes were filled with something strange, fear, and perhaps even a hint of pleading. "Protect Ohafia?" Chima repeated, his voice doubtful. "But you've hurt my people. You've taken from them, sacrificed them for your power." Onyeze's face softened for a moment, his voice quieting. "I had no choice," he said. "The spirits demand a prize, and I gave it to them. If I hadn't, they would have destroyed everything." Chima's mind raced, his heart caught in a whirlwind of doubt and anger. Could it be that the king truly believed he was protecting the village, or was this just another one of his lies? He looked down at the totem, feeling its dark power pulsing beneath his fingers. Destroying it would mean freeing his people from the king's rule, but it could also mean unleashing something even worse. "Let me go and I will make things right," Onyeze pleaded, his voice almost gentle. "I promise I will change." Chima's hand wavered, but then he remembered the old man's words, the pain of his people, and his own determination. He knew that this was a risk he had to take. Gritting his teeth, he raised the amulet high and brought it down on the totem with all his strength. The totem shattered, a bright blinding light bursting forth, filling the clearing with an intense searing glow. Chima shielded his eyes, feeling a powerful wind rush past him as the spirits were released, their angry cries echoing through the night. Onyeze let out a scream, his body twisting and writhing as the power that had bound him was torn away. Shadows poured from him, swirling like a storm, and the spirits were set free. For a moment, it seemed as though the forest itself was alive, filled with a fury that shook the very ground. And then, silence. The light faded and the shadows disappeared, leaving only the broken pieces of the totem scattered at Chima's feet. Onyeze lay crumpled on the ground, his once mighty figure now weak and frail. His eyes, once filled with arrogance and power, were empty and hollow. Chima stepped forward, looking down at the fallen king. "Your power is gone," he said softly. "You no longer control the spirits." Onyeze's gaze met Chima's, and for the first time, he looked defeated. "I only wanted to protect Ohafia," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "But the power, it consumed me." Chima felt a pang of sadness, but he knew it was too late for sympathy. The king had made his choices, and now he was paying the price. Turning away, Chima began his journey back through the forest. The weight of the amulet still warm against his chest. He felt tired but also lighter, as if a great burden had been lifted from his heart. When he finally emerged from the dark forest, the first rays of dawn were breaking over the village. The people were waiting, their faces filled with hope and wonder as they saw Chima, the boy who had faced the king and won.